Welcome. I hope you are having a wonderful night. Tonight, I will be telling some terrifyingly scary stories. Make sure to leave your feedback on the comments so I can make this the best experience for you. I hope you are warm and ready. Let's begin. Me and my brother live in a house in a well-populated area. We know the neighbors fairly well, but aren't particularly friendly. We don't hate them, but we don't hang out or have grill outs or anything. Anyway, the other night we were dead asleep when I heard what sounded like someone stomping up the steps to our porch. Thinking it was just my brain messing with me, like a dream I hadn't completely woken up from or something. I ignored it and rolled over. Then, I heard the doorknob jiggling on the front door. Alarmed, I grabbed something to defend myself and woke my brother, making sure someone else heard it too. Just to be sure I wasn't going crazy, we both went to the front hall where the door was, and the doorknob was shaking still. We approached the door cautiously, and my brother yelled, "You have exactly 3 seconds before you get more than you came here for." Then the jiggling stopped, and a loud bang was heard, like someone punched or kicked the door. It didn't open, and we didn't hear anything else. I turned the porch light on and peered out the window, but I saw no one. We were both a bit shaken, so we went to sit down and try to relax. I was getting some water when the back door started having the same thing happen. The doorknob was violently shaking, as if someone was really trying to get in. This time, I didn't hesitate. I threw the light on and looked outside, but again, I saw no one. I turned the light off and started to back away. Then, once again, a loud bang, as if someone kicked the door. Determined to confront the situation, I grabbed a weapon and opened the back door, ready to defend ourselves. To our surprise, there was no one there. Not even the neighbor's dog was making a sound. I shut the door, locked it up, and went to sit back down. My brother and I talked a bit until we calmed down, and then we heard a loud laugh followed by a scream from our backyard. My heart racing, I turned on the light to the back porch once again, but I saw nothing. My brother heard it too, and even the neighbor's dog seemed disturbed by the sound. That was about a week ago. We haven't heard anything since. I still don't know what this was. I don't think our neighbors have any ill feelings towards us, so I can't say it was them messing with us. But like I said, I don't know what this could have been. To protect my family members, some facts surround the story will be changed, but the location is going to stay the same. Back in 1991, my grandma Bia was a Mexican-American, single mother, and extremely successful realtor in the Bay Area, and owned a home in one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in San Jose. What I am about to tell you may sound like something straight out of a horror movie, but has been collaborated by multiple unbiased witnesses who were present that night, causing me to never forget and constantly be haunted by this story. While my grandma Bia's children, my father, Tim, 2 aunts, Ashley, Alicia, and uncle, Shane, were in their later teen years, my grandmother hired a maid named Elva to help around the house with cleaning. By all accounts, Elva was hardworking and drop-dead gorgeous, with glowing tan skin, big brown eyes, and beautiful hair that flowed to her waist. Elva came to California with her parents from a small town in Jalisco, Mexico, as a young child. Both Elva's parents were workers in nearby agricultural farms. At 16 years old, Elva reached out to an ad my grandmother put in a newspaper for a maid and began working shortly after. Elva was with my grandmother for 10 years before everything happened and had went from being a weekly cleaner to a live-in maid. Elva looked up to my grandmother for her independence and how she came from nothing to being an extremely successful Latina realtor and owning a home in such a renowned majority white neighborhood. As the years passed and Bia's adult children began to move out and start their own lives, Elva remained by her side, maintaining the luxurious 5-bedroom home and absorbing everything she could about finding success in the realtor business. Bia and Elva became fairly close, Bea learned all about Elva's life and how her grandparents owned large lots of land in their hometown and how Elva's grandfather favored her Aunt Agnes over her mother, leaving her to inherit all the land, and Elva's mother with nothing. Agnes sold all land the minute Elva's grandparents passed away and divided nothing with Elva's mother. Using her newfound wealth, Agnes bought a large home 2 streets down from Bea's for herself and her charismatic husband Lee, using Bea as her realtor after being referred to her by Elva. Although Elva's mother wanted nothing to do with Agnes, Elva and her aunt maintained a relationship, having weekly visits and an occasional lunch. Agnes looked strikingly similar to Elva, which Lee never failed to point out, making her a very beautiful woman for her age. With Bea's children no longer living in the house, the workload lessened for Elva, leaving her more time for herself. Elva would finish her cleaning early and study with the help of Bea in the afternoons, in hopes of obtaining her realtor license. Bea was anything but oblivious, and was very aware of her surrounding, a trait she picked up in her years of being a single mother to 4 sneaky teenagers. Bea would notice Elva getting ready nightly and walking out to a dark vehicle, very similar to the car that Agnes' husband Lee drove. Elva would return hours later and resort to her room. Bea was very suspicious of this, but kept her thoughts to herself. That is, until Elva broke down to her a month later about expecting a baby. Bea expressed her suspicion and questioned Elva about who the baby's father was, which Elva would not reveal. Bea allowed Elva to stay in her home throughout her pregnancy and agreed to let her stay after so long as she continued with their agreed lists of duties to maintain the home, regardless of the gut-wrenching suspicious that her beautiful, hardworking maid was indeed having a full-on affair with her. Aunt's husband Lee. Elva delivered a beautiful baby boy who she doted over. Bea was stunned at what an excellent mother Elva had become virtually overnight, and found joy in watching her young maid with her beautiful baby boy find solace in her home. The joy was short-lived when one day Bea was working on listings when the most blood-curdling scream she ever heard rocked through the home. She rushed out of her office to find Elva desperately trying to wake up her baby boy, hollering for Bea to call an ambulance. Ice-cold shock ran down Bea's spine as she fumbled the landline in her hand. Elva's baby boy died that day from SIDS. As the ambulance worked on the baby, Bea couldn't take her eyes off his blue lips. Bea tried to console Elva, but it was impossible. The next few days felt like months as darkness filled Bea's home. Bea would listen to Elva curse God daily and ask how he could take her baby. A month after the baby passed away, in an attempt to get Elva's mind off of everything Bea offered to take her with her to her son Tim's home in Lake Tulloch for a family gathering. The drive up was uneventful for the most part. Lots of silence, aside from occasional comments from Bea's 20-year-old daughter Alicia and her friend, Dee, who had come along as well, about how beautiful the ride was. All of Bea's children were at the gathering at her oldest son Tim's home, including Tim's wife Angie, their 2 daughters, as well Bea's daughter, Ashley's 2 daughters. As darkness took over, the sunny day, Elva remained withdrawn and silent, sitting in a chair, gazing out a window in the corner of Tim and Angie's large living room. At one point, Bea was looking for dollar bills to pass to her granddaughters and asked that Alicia's friend Dee go out to her car to grab her purse. Dee walked out the door and shivered as she wrapped her jean jacket around her, stepping into the cold air. She walked down the driveway and up to the car when she instantly froze. In the back seat of Bea's car was a baby. Blueness was creeping into his skin as the baby gasped for air. Dee screamed at the top of her lungs that there was a baby in the back seat of the car. In the blink of an eye, she opened the door and the baby was gone. Bea's son Shane was already running down the steps of the house by the time she turned her head. Simultaneously, a blood-curdling howl ripped through the house and out the front door. Inside the house, Elva was now standing, staring directing at Bea. The room began to shake as windows rattled in their frame. Elva's eyes turned into a black haze as her face contorted, and she began speaking. She kept repeating in a deep whisper that she wanted Bia and planned to take her with her. Tim's wife scooped up all the children and ran to a back room, stacking furniture up against the door. Bia's children all ran towards Elva as she grabbed a marble coffee table that took 3 men to move into the home and threw it across the room effortlessly. Tim and Shane grabbed Elva by the arms, trying to restrain her as she held her gaze on Bea. Alicia slapped Elva across the face in an attempt to snap her out of it, when all of a sudden her eyes rolled to the back of her head and she collapsed. Bia's sons did everything they could to revive her and continued CPR until an ambulance arrived. Elva died 3 days later in the hospital. After that day, everything in my grandmother's life began to go downhill. Her successful days as a realtor came to an end, and she was no longer able to obtain or hold clients. The once beautiful home was filled with an undeniable evil presence that everyone who entered noticed. Doors would open and close on their own. Things would go missing. Everyone who slept in the home felt as if they were being watched, and late at night you would hear the baby's cries rip through the house. My grandmother ended up losing her home as weird events continued to plague her life. To this day, my grandmother will not speak about the events that took place that day. I still wonder about my grandmother's home and the evilness that was housed within, conceived from a mother's grief in losing her child. I wonder if the people who own the home now experience even a fraction of the pure terror that house brought to my family for decades. I used to live in a small rural town in Canada. There stood an old folks' home for the mentally unwell. Although it had been closed for many years before I arrived, during the day, people would gather on the property enjoying the well-kept grass and trees. The town still took care of the surrounding grounds, knowing that the locals found solace and relaxation there. The actual building itself was locked up tight, but that didn't stop adventurous teenagers from trying to break in. It became a popular pastime to explore the abandoned building, to scare themselves and seek a thrill. On a few occasions, I joined a group of 5 or so people, often a little drunk or high. But even in a sober state, the experience was strangely exhilarating, perhaps due to the false sense of security that comes from being in a group. Typically, our escapades would be cut short when the police were inevitably called due to the noise we made. We would have to flee, running from the approaching sirens. However, one fateful night, my best friend and I, the ultimate skeptic, decided to venture into an unexplored part of the building. We wanted to minimize the chances of attracting attention, so it was just the 2 of us. We didn't want to risk encountering the police in an unfamiliar area with no escape route. Allow me to paint a picture of the building for you. It stood 5 stories tall, with the 4th and 5th floors forming a slight tower that jutted out from the middle. The front of the building boasted old brick, while the back consisted of more modern cement blocks, painted over like those found in schools. It was as if someone had cobbled together an old school, a church, and an asylum. Several smaller structures, such as a pool house and a gymnasium, surrounded the main building. We had already explored and ransacked these smaller structures, but the main floor of the old building remained untouched. To gain access to the building, we devised a plan. We climbed onto the roof of the boiler room at the back, stacking up furniture debris we found in a ransacked storage building behind the main structure. With our makeshift ladder, we managed to reach a plywood cover that was nailed over a hole in the roof. It led into the boiler room, and we used the pipes along the ceiling and walls to lower ourselves down. This part of the building appeared relatively modern, indicating that it had been added closer to the time the facility was closed. Thankfully, we discovered an exit door that could be opened from the inside, providing a straightforward escape route if needed. My friend and I were filled with anticipation and excitement as we made our way to the back of the room. There, we found the door that led to the untouched main floor of the building. Despite our expectations, the door opened with a loud, achy creak that reverberated through the silence. As the door swung open, we were immediately struck by the sight of thick layers of dust that covered every surface, creating a quarter-inch film over everything. We decided to go right, as it led to a fascinating-looking main area, filled with sheet-covered furniture. Using our phone screens as makeshift lights, we cautiously took a few steps into the room. And then, it hit me like a freight train. A wave of sickness washed over me. Not the kind that makes you want to vomit, but the kind that makes you feel as though you're about to die. It was an intense, gut-wrenching feeling, as if every fiber of my being screamed, "Run, leave, escape, now." I began to shake uncontrollably for no apparent reason. If I had to compare it to something, it felt like someone was right behind me with the intent to end me. It was weird because of how sudden it was. Like a switch went off. I was excited and positive up until the point where I was convinced we were about to get jumped or murdered. I looked at my buddy, and his face had the same expression of what I felt. Genuinely terrified, white as a ghost. I think that might scared me even more honestly, because I've never seen him like that. Remember, neither of us saw anything at this point. No ghosts, no distinct noises after the door creak, no creepy dolls or skeletons. Just thick dust and sheet-covered furniture. It made no sense that I felt so threatened, and looking at my friend, I knew he felt it too. Without saying a word to each other, we turned on our heels and walked toward the boiler room. We didn't tell each other that either of us wanted to go. We just started backtracking faster than we came in. I'm leading us at this point, and my blood ran ice cold when I noticed something on the other side of the door we left open. A set of fresh-looking footprints that led down the left route of the hall. We both went right to get the large main room. The prints were positively not ours. As we got closer, it got worse. Those footprints started 8 to 10 feet from the door, in the middle of the hall. It looked like a person teleported 10 feet from the door mid-stride and walked the opposite way and around the corner. We booked out of there as fast as possible. Thank fuck there was an exit in the boiler room, because I can't imagine climbing up those pipes in that panic. Literally never went back to that building. I asked my buddy what he saw on the way back to his house, and he said he saw the prints and noticed how far they were from the door. So I know I wasn't seeing things. I'm an atheist. I don't have a good explanation for this, and I'd really love one.